Hey guys, today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Fred. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/Fred. But for now, enjoy the show. Hello everybody. Come on in, sit down, relax, go to the gym. Maybe you're driving your car, maybe you're doing dishes, maybe you're, maybe with you're off your girl. This is the week of love. That's right, St. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. And by the way, guys, we're gonna have a special St. Valentine's Day episode this week. Hey, I have a few questions for you. Do you aspire to a creative life? Are you tired of working 9 to 5? Are you asking yourself, what is the point of it all? Do you want to take your life to the next level? This is the Creative Magic Unchained. This podcast is about unleashing your creativity. That's right. We talk to experts. We step into the unknown. It is an inspirational podcast. It is a magical podcast. It is an intuitive podcast as we chat with enigmatic, charismatic artists from around the globe. That's right. From musicians, singers, radio hosts, business people, photographers, everything in between. The Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. I'm funky like a monkey. Hey, in this place, sky is the limit. And space is the place. I am Frederick Bai. You can also call me Fred, or you can call me Frederick B.A. Anyway, any way you want it, that's cool with me. I'm your host. I'm a businessman. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a friend. I'm a partner. I am an animal lover. And this is free. FREE every time you download it on iTunes or Stitcher. So please go over there, subscribe. It is listener supported. If you think that these episodes can really benefit someone, share it. Share it with somebody you like. Share it with somebody you love. Hey, the more people hear about it, the better it is. So you can also leave a review in iTunes and Stitcher at Creative Magic. It really helps a brother out. It really does help a brother out. And what you're going to do now, by the way, is you're going to join our creatives community and get your free audio right now. So right now, what you're going to do, you're going to go to frederickby.com and you're going to enter your email right there at the bottom of the screen. You have a pop-up that's going to say, hey, join the creatives community, and you're going to get a bunch of cool stuff. You're going to have a free audio with my interview with JF Dubois. He's a new artist, but we talk about passion and the path that he took to get there. You're going to have Q&A articles. You're going to check out, you're going to be the first to receive all the podcasts and a few giveaways that I'm about to give in either a few weeks, a few days. I can't tell you right now, but I tell you what, a bunch of surprises are coming up in the near future. All right. Right before we dive into it, as you know, I always like to start off with something funny. So listen to this. A minister told his congregation, next week, I plan to preach about the sin of lying. To help you understand my sermon, I want you all to read Mark 17. The following Sunday, as he prepared to deliver his sermon, the minister asked for a show of hands. He wanted to know how many had read Mark 17. Every hand went up. The minister smiled and said, Mark has only 16 chapters. I will now proceed with my sermon on the sin of lying. All right, guys. All right, bunch of liars. All right. Right before we dive into this fascinating interview here, I bumped into an article this week that I thought would be very, very useful to you guys. It's the title is 7 Habits of Self-Made Millionaires. And maybe if you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, you understand my, you are aware of my concern and my will to really educate myself financially, therefore educate you, because we're on this journey together. And so many of us want to take the first steps in our creative life or in our passion, or, we're curious about something. We want to write a book, produce an album, or whatever. And the number one preoccupation we have, the number one worry we have for the most of us is money. And I think we need to be financially educated, and I think we need to develop good habits. So this article, I found it, actually I heard about it on fastcompany.com. That's fastcompany.com. And the person who wrote the article is Stephanie Voza. It was written back in November, the 16th of November. So I just want to share it with you for, if you allow me, 2 to 3 minutes here. So it goes like this. Most millionaires are not born. They're self-made. In a survey by Fidelity Investments, approximately 80% of people who have a net worth of $1 million or more did it without a trust fund or inheritance. As the classic Smith-Barney commercial from the 70s used to say, they make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it. Now, I don't remember this commercial, but maybe many of you may remember it. And she goes on to say that they also have habits that help them accumulate wealth. Your habits are the reason why you're rich or poor, says Tom Corley, author of Rich Habits, the daily success habits of wealthy individuals. In fact, it's often 2 or 3 habits that separate the wealthy from those who are financially challenged. Corley has studied millionaires for 12 years and says many of them share the same daily practices and beliefs. Here are 7 habits of self-made millionaires. Right before I continue on, I just want to say that I am planning on, for sure, getting financial experts on this show. And trust me, they won't be boring, a boring show about investing and taxing, all that. No, it's going to be an informative show for you guys. You're going to understand it. I believe in education in, common language that the layman can understand. All right, so the article goes on to say the number one habit that self-made millionaires have is they read. Self-made millionaires are readers. Oh, yeah, you and I are readers, right? And Corley says this is the number one habit to adopt if you want to become wealthy. According to his study, 85% of millionaires read 2 or more books a month, and they choose books that help them grow, including topics like careers, biographies of successful people, self-help, health, current events, psychology, and leadership. The key to success in life is growing your knowledge base and skills, says Corley. Devote 30 minutes or more each day to learning by reading books. If you do, it will set you apart from the competition, as most people do not read. Ain't that freaking crazy? Ain't that freaking crazy? We don't read. We don't read in this place. All right, but you guys read, right? I know that. Second habit, they pursue things that interest them. People, and this is a major theme on this show. Creative Magic Unchained is all about, pursuing things that we have an interest in. We don't just pursue things for money or for status or because, mommy and daddy said that was the right thing to do. And you should have a nice, secure job. Blah, blah, blah. No, we are here this show is about fulfillment. So the article goes on to say people often enter career the stability factor, but wealthy people pursue their interests. They put the ladder on their own wall, says Corley. When you're passionate about what you're doing, you work harder. Third, they find a mentor. 93% of self-made millionaires in Corley's study attribute their wealth to having mentors. Finding a success mentor in life is one of the least painful ways to become rich. Maybe I should follow this advice. Says Corley, it can put you on a fast track to success. Corley said there are 5 types of success mentors. Parents. Parenting is very important. So all you guys out there who are parents, hey, you're the number one mentor for your kid. So parenting is very important when it comes to being a millionaire. Parents are your first mentors. If they teach children good daily success habits, they will struggle less in life. Teachers can reinforce the mentoring children receive at home from their parents or step in to provide the success mentoring absent at home. Career mentors. Finding a mentor at work you admire, trust, and respect can lead to success in life. Choose someone at least 2 levels above your rank, and this is very important. I've bumped into really bad leaders at work. When I used to work in a cubicle, guys, I look back sometimes, I go, my gosh, I can't believe. Anyway, it boggles my mind sometimes. Choose your mentors wisely, and trust your gut. Trust your gut, and do you respect that person? I didn't, back in the day when I used to work in a cubicle, I did not respect the individual, and when they're assigned as your manager, as you're supposed to be, they used to call themselves our coaches. We're not your managers, we're your coaches. Trust your gut and don't just follow anyone. All right, book mentors. Mentors don't have to be real relationships. Sometimes the best source are found in books, particularly books about successful people, says Corley. Yourself, experience, also called the school of hard knocks. Oof. A lot of us go through that, don't we? You can mentor yourself by learning from your own mistakes. This is the hard path to success because those mistakes and failure carry significant costs in both time and money, says Corley. But this is also the most powerful type of mentoring you can get because the lessons you learn are infused with intense emotion and never forgotten. Yeah, I can attest to that. Number 4, they use dreams to set goals. Before millionaires identify goals, they do something that Corley calls dream setting. They write down what their ideal life would look like, then use this script to create the bullet point list of dreams. Goals are then built around each dream. Think of dreams as a ladder, and the rungs are your goals. He says, ask yourself, what do I need to do in order for each wish or dream to come true? Am I capable of performing those activities? And do I have the necessary skills and knowledge? Then take action. 5, they write to-do lists. Goals are only goals when they have 2 things, 100% achievability and physical activity, says Corley. Millionaires break down goals into physical action steps that make up their to-do list, and many have lists that follow a habit. Millionaires process success, says Corley. When you create processes, you don't have to think, which takes energy and contributes to decision fatigue. Habits are valuable because they drain fuel that can be used doing something else. 6, they create multiple streams of income. Oh, is that important? Multiple streams of income. God bless multiple streams of income. Self-made millionaires do not rely on only a single source of income, says Corley. Instead, they develop multiple streams. And most have at least 3. 65% had 3 or more streams of income that they created over time. Diversifying your sources of income allows you to weather the economic downturns. Diversify. I'm sure you've heard certain people say that. You're like a financial advisor, Anyway, so so this allows you to weather the economic downturns that always occur in life. Revenue streams include real estate rentals, stock market investments, annuities, private equity investments, part ownership in side businesses, ancillary products or services, and royalties. The 7th, they avoid time wasters. Do you have a lot of time wasters, people? And if you're listening to this podcast, you're on the right way. You're on the right path, I guess. All right. So millionaires believe money can be recouped, but the bigger risk is wasted time. When we invest our time in anything, it is lost forever, says Corley. Yet, because we are all given what seems to be an abundance of time, it has very little value to us. That is true. I try to do my best and not take time for granted. Anyway, 67% of the self-made millionaires in Coley's study watch less than 1 hour of TV each day. And 63% spend less than 1 hour a day on the internet activities such as Facebook or watching YouTube videos. It's funny because now when I find myself on Facebook and YouTube, I ask myself, is this really worth it? Like I start to have this kind of pang in my stomach, like this knot in my stomach. Now it's like, ugh, I start to, am I wasting my time? Anyway. And so this freed up time for them to pursue their dreams, goals, read, learn, exercise, volunteer, and network. I like that story. Money always has a special place, whether we admit it or not. It's so important. It's so important. I think so many of us have been misled towards money, and including yours, truly speaking, right now. And we learn from our own mistakes, as they say. And I am learning, and and you know what? I'm glad to be on the path that I am today. Anyway, talking to you. All right, let's get on to today's interview. Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I can see it. I can see it in my mind right now. I can see it. I'm a visionary. I'm a medium. I can see it. All right, we're talking to Michael Modzelewski. Michael Modzelewski, look, he's been everywhere. He has been on Oprah. You know Oprah, right? He's been on the Cosmopolitan Magazine. He has appeared on PBS and guys, countless others. He is an author and an adventurer. He's the author of, plenty of books like Inside Passage, Living with Killer Whales, Bald Eagles and Kwakiutl Indians, North Through Paradise, Ageless Crest, a memoir, and his latest, A Wildlife, The Misadventures of a Cosmo Bachelor. And there's a bunch of stuff in there. We talked about it a little bit in the interview. He talks about women, talks about his adventures. Man, this guy is just, you're gonna hear it in his voice. You're gonna recognize when people are fulfilled, when people have had like a great life, they kind of have this enthusiasm in their voices. They kind of have this uplifting spirit, and this guy definitely has that. When he's not writing books, though, he's hosting adventure travel TV shows, and he gives motivational speeches. Michael enjoys exploring the Alaskan fjords. I don't even know how to pronounce it. And he leads walking safaris in Tanzania in Africa. So you see the kind of guy he is. He's all over the place, all over the world, traveling, doing his thing. Hey, this guy is a happy dude. You're going to learn a lot from his journey. I can tell you this. He's a perfect guest for the Creative Magic Unchained. And by the way, he sent me his book, Wildlife, The Misadventures of a Cosmo Bachelor. I'm waiting for it right now. And we're gonna have him again on this show because I loved him as a guest and I really want to dive into his books. So today we're gonna dive into it all, brothers and sisters. We're gonna dive into his background. His father was an NFL player. We're gonna dive into the fears, the fear-driven world. Lack of money, fears of rejection, doing what we love in life. We want to do what we love, and we're gonna find out how he came to become a writer. We speak about we go all over it. We dive into it. So without further ado, I'm gonna stop babbling and talk about, I'm gonna stop babbling altogether, and we're gonna get to the conversation right after this. Hey guys, quick thanks to RadioGuestList.com, where you can find people to interview for free. Or if you want to be interviewed, you can go there too. RadioGuestList.com. Thank you guys for your support. And speaking of you listeners, I want to hear from you. If you would like to be on this show to discuss a book you have written or that you loved, if you have a book recommendation or you just want to chat, email me. I want to hear from you at info@fredericbai.com. That's info@fredericbaye.com. And for advertisement offers, use the same address with subject advertising. Hello. So we are here with Michael Modzelewski. He's an adventurer and author. That's right. He authored Wildlife, The Misadventures of Cosmo Bachelor. He's also the host of adventure travel TV shows, and he gives motivational speeches. He's appeared on Oprah, Cosmopolitan Magazines, PBS TV, and countless others. How are you today?
Excellent, Frederick. Good to be with you.
Awesome. We're honored. Thank you very much. Hey, man, you've done, like I said before we went on the air, you've done it all. I mean, you seem to be, you're a real adventurer. You went in many countries. And we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive a little bit about your work and your books and your motivational speeches. But first, give us an idea here of your background.
Well, my father was a very famous athlete. He was a professional football player in the NFL in the city of Cleveland, Ohio. So, and we never had to be him. He never said, you've got to grow up to be a football player or whatever. He always said, whatever you choose to do in life, just be the best. And whenever he would come home, from an NFL game or just, practice, he would say to his 4 children, the only 4-letter word I do not want to hear in this house is can't. You can do anything in life if you put your mind to it and work hard enough. So there was such a positive upbringing. But Frederick, with my dad, I had go. But with my mother, I had whoa.
What does that mean?
She's Italian background, and I don't have a mother, I have a smother.
Okay.
So she was terrified, and said, oh my God, don't live, you might die.
Ah, I get it.
And, I worry from the womb to the tomb. Just tell me after you do all these crazy things, you're personally responsible for every gray hair on my head,
Oh.
So it was interesting dynamic to kind of have that dichotomy of one parent just saying, go get it. And the other parent, saying, whoa, Mm-hmm. But my mother really gave me my career because when I was a little boy in Cleveland, Ohio, 6, 7, 8 years old, she read me to sleep every single night with the great stories of King Arthur and the Round Table, of Grimm's fairy tales. And one night she picked up a book called The Call of the Wild by Jack London. And I don't know why that particular story resonated so much. And she told me that even when my eyes were closed and I was breathing heavy, in other words, I was asleep, she kept reading. And I think it's been proven if you want to learn a foreign language, let the tape recorder run all night. Because I think our subconscious is like the pilot light in a stove. It never goes out. And we're always absorbing things, even if our eyes are closed. So my mother put in my ear and in my heart and soul that love of language, the sense of story with those nightly readings as a little boy.
All right. So what did you want to do when you grow up?
Well, the crisis came. I kind of had 2 sides of my life, and that was the athlete, because to try to please my father, I did go on a football scholarship to the University of Maryland, the same school that he went to. And I wasn't, not very big like my dad, but I was a wide receiver that catches the football. And then one game against the Naval Academy, I was running down to cover a kickoff, and I launched myself to tackle the guy, and I heard his knee explode in the ear hole of my helmet. And when I jumped up and saw the poor guy on the ground screaming, I just felt horrible. And I ran off the field, and the coach picked me up and said, that's what we want here. And I just disconnected from football because of that violence. Mm-hmm. And the writer in me, the poet that, I had always kept alive by writing a journal and, tearing pictures out of magazines and writing imaginary captions, things like that. And the turning point was when I actually skipped out of the university and I bought a Ural pass, a train pass, and for 3 months I traveled all over Europe by myself by simply jumping on trains. And there I learned that it's not the athlete that is so respected, but it's the artist. There's streets named after writers. And one of the turning points was I was sitting in a cafe in the left bank in Paris. And, just a punk kid with a backpack, traveling around, sleeping in hostels. And I was scribbling what I had done that day in my journal. And there was a Parisian couple sitting a couple tables over, and they invited me to join them. And I said, thank you so much. I would love to, but I just need to finish this one sentence, and I'll be right there. And they looked at me and said, you're a writer. And I was nothing. I was a kid scribbling in a journal, but they said the word writer with such reverence. And, when you see Balzac Avenue and you see streets named after writers and such respect that's given for the creative mind in Europe. And I came back from that trip with a whole new perspective. And then I switched colleges. I decided to go to Indiana University, study journalism, because I figured, you should learn the rules before you break them. And Indiana University has one of the best journalism programs in the United States. But it was that trip to Europe and traveling around and getting a fresh perspective. And that's what really gave me the confidence and the determination to try to be a writer or a communicator, storyteller, call it what you may.
Let me ask you this. What was the mentality of the adults around you, as it pertained to creativity? You mentioned, your dad was, you can do anything you want in life. Your mother was more that secure type. When you told them, when you tell them, hey, mom, or dad, I'm going to be a football player. And then you say, hey, mom or dad, I'm going to be a writer. How did they react? Because, man, when you're young, when you're 19 years old, 18 years old, you got to tell your parents that stuff. I'm going to be a football player. A lot of parents freak out, or, they almost expect you to fail in a way. Not that they don't love you, not in a negative way, but it's like, what was the mindset of,
Well, there was a big rift between my father and I, because when you go on a football scholarship, everything is paid for. You don't have to pay for your tuition. I mean, the world is easy when you're an athlete, even on a college level. Everything's provided for you. And I quit that. I gave that up. And to earn enough money to go over to Europe for that 3 months to buy my Ural pass, I loaded trucks at a grocery warehouse from midnight to 8 a.m. with alcoholics, drug addicts, sort of the dregs of society that, Celine and Henry Miller and Bukowski that's sort of the underbelly of life world. And I had never been exposed to that. I go from athletic adulation to being one of the kings on campus to being with these people that I love so much, because I believe that we are all equal, no matter what we do in life, what our calling is. We're all united by our humanity. And I just saw a whole nother side of life. But of course, my father, that drove him nuts, that he didn't care about the football part, but he said, my God, they're paying for your education. And you gave that up to go load trucks with winos and junkies. And he didn't talk to me for about 6 months. And he thought I was just going to be a bum. I'm going to go over to Europe. And sometimes I purposely slept in train stations and our park benches, because I didn't want to stay in hotels. I didn't want to be sealed off. I wanted to chew the bone of life. I wanted to get right in there with humanity on all the levels. And I had, a big conflict with my father. And I mean, rightly so. Our parents want security for us. They, want us to find a good job. But at that time, I was searching. And it's very difficult because no matter what stage you're in life, you want your parents' approval. Mm. And then, of course, by going off to Europe alone, I drove my smother mother crazy, you know. Oh, my God, you know, you're going to get robbed. You're going to...
Yeah. And then you became a writer.
Then I went to college. I learned, you know, the rules at the journalism school. And then I took one creative writing course. And the professor threw me out.
Why?
He said, Michael, I can't teach you anything. He says, you have a natural style. And what I would try to teach you would just take away. He says, you're a born writer. Wow. And he said, what you need to do is get out of my classroom and go live life and just write about your experiences because you belong out there in the world. Wow. At first, you know, one half of me was like defeated because I couldn't take this incredible class that was so crammed. Every student wanted to get into. And he was a prophet in a way because he said to me, you know what you should do? You should go. You're a wild man. He said, you should go live on an island somewhere. And, you know, years later, that's exactly what happened to me. And that's what launched my career.
Wow.
So I left the university, I graduated, got my degree, and I went to Aspen, Colorado, the ski town about 8,000 feet up in the Rockies. And I thought I would just ski, see if I could make it as a freelance writer, you know, picking up newspaper assignments from newspapers, magazines. I wrote some nature film scripts, but I starved. I basically lived on peanut butter and top ramen, you know, from assignment to assignment. Mm-hmm. But Frederick, this is where life gets very strange. And this is where I'm wondering, you know, are there really any accidents in life? Aspen is just as famous in the summertime for having cultural experiences and conventions and meetings as it is for the skiing in the winter. And they have like music festivals, things like that. And one of the best things they do in the summer is the International Design Conference, where they have creative minds and designers, whether it's cars, clothing, you know, everyday objects, fly into this mountain hamlet for a week to share ideas. And it was very pricey to get in, but if you were a local and you lived there and you volunteered your labor to put up the tents, that you could get in for free. So that I did. I helped to erect the pavilion tents. And the very first day, they had a lunch break. And they said to the 1,000 attendees, okay, everybody, go out into the meadow. We're going to watch hang gliders come off the top of Ajax Mountain. They're going to land at your feet. So this is the day that changed my life because there were 1,000 people turning around like human tops, watching these human kites swirl down from the top of the mountain and land at our feet. And I bumped into a back. But why wasn't I standing 18 inches to the left or 1 foot to the right? I would have missed my future. I bumped into a back of a beautiful, we both turned around to apologize. And standing before me is a French-Canadian woman from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Really?
Named Geneviève Lemarchand.
Geneviève Lemarchand. I'm French-Canadian, by the way, so Geneviève.
And I think she was from Brittany, which is in the north of France, or?
A French-Canadian?
No, originally I think she left France, but I think Brittany was her hometown.
I don't know Brittany because I live in Quebec. I don't know any Brittany in Quebec.
Yeah, I think she was from northern France and then came over to Canada.
Okay.
And she had that, oh my God, that French accent. It wraps around a man's heart. I mean, we have no chance, you know? Geneviève is standing before me. She's an architect. She is so fascinating. She is just the embodiment of, you know, the French beauty and femininity that French women just exude. And we skipped out of the conference. We went up into the mountains camping and drank Beaujolais wine. And I mean, we just totally fell in love. So Geneviève had to get back to Vancouver to her practice. And there I am in Colorado, and I'm getting a letter just about every day from Gigi was her nickname, and my nickname was Momo. And she said, Momo, you must come and see me. I miss you so much. And so I had never been past Colorado. I had never been any further west, and not having a car, not having any money, I stuck out my thumb and I hitchhiked all the way from Colorado to Los Angeles and then all the way up the West Coast on Highway 1 until I got to Vancouver. And then we spent 2 weeks on her sailboat going up the Inside Passage toward Alaska. And Fred, I didn't even know this place was there. You've got 15,000-foot mountains coming right out of the ocean. Killer whales were escorting the sailboat hour after hour. Salmon in August were pouring up the streams and rivers. Grizzly bears were standing like 10 feet away because the sailboat was silent as we went by, and they were pulling these huge fish out of the rivers. It was the most pristine, beautiful place I had ever seen in my life. And we go back to Genevieve's apartment, and this is where life gets really weird. And the phone rings, and it's the very last night. I have my suitcases packed by the door, and I'm due to go back to Colorado. The phone rings, and it's a man that lived on a wilderness island right where we sailed that had gotten Genevieve's phone number 9 years before at a party. And he wanted to take her out for dinner. And Genevieve said, Will, I remember you. You're the man who lives in paradise. You play your Russian guitar and the killer whales come into the bay to listen to you. You take your jacket off when you're gardening and the bees make hives in your pockets. And yeah, you're phenomenal, the where you live and all of that. But how many men would go out knowing there's another man tagging along? Mm-hmm. You know, 99.9% of males would probably hang up the phone and say, well, I'll call you in another 9 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, again, my whole future could have disappeared with the click of a telephone. So Will, to his credit, said, all right, the three of us will go out. So we went for Chinese food. And
you knew who he was?
What's that?
Did you know who he was?
No.
Okay.
And Genevieve had never really talked about him, even though we had gone kind of through his neighborhood up there. So we go for Chinese food, and Genevieve is ignored. She is just sitting back kind of with her arms crossed with a smile on her face because Will and I just clicked. He had what I wanted at that time. I was looking to write my first book about something I could put my passion and my heart into instead of just my head. You know, I was kind of getting a little tired of writing short articles and magazine, newspaper pieces. I really wanted to go deep, but I wanted to write with passion. And that I found during that sailboat trip with the wilderness and the beauty. And it was Jack London. It was the call of the wild, the way he was living. And Fred, I almost reached across the table in the restaurant and grabbed him by the lapels and said, "Can I come and see your island?" But, you know, I would never do that. Mm-hmm. But I think he sensed what I wanted and where I was in life, because he stood up and he said, "Mike, great meeting you. I'm in a hurry, but I'm now giving you a formal invitation to come to my island. It's 200 miles north and about 100 years back in time." And after he left, I was so excited. I was almost levitating off my chair, you know, because I just sensed this was a great opportunity. And then the fortune cookies came after the Chinese meal. And, you know, I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm talking to Genevieve, and I pluck one of the cookies off of the plate, and I crack it open, and it says, "You are going on a journey to an exotic land." I mean, do we need a hammer to hit us over the head? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, but then there's so many times in life where there's so many reasons why we can't do something. Oh, I got bills to pay. I got to get back to a job, you know. But something in my solar plexus that I always trust, that saved my life more than once, I call it the voice of wisdom. It told me, you got to go do this. You got to take the next step. So I was going to stay on his island for 2 weeks, and it turned into 2 years. And that was the subject of my first book.
Wow.
But wow. I mean, bumping into Genevieve's back, and then Will Meloff not hanging up that telephone, you know, how does that work? It's just crazy.
Wow. Once again, we're here with Michael Modzelewski. He's an adventurer, an author. He wrote so many books, including Wildlife, The Misadventures of Cosmo Bachelor. He's also the host of adventure travel TV shows, and he gives motivational speeches. All right. You mentioned earlier, now I think we have the kind of same, I mean, you mentioned earlier Henry Miller. I am a huge fan of Henry Miller. Do you read him?
Oh, I read him, all throughout Europe. It was the perfect author to read when you're sleeping in train stations. You're hanging out in hostels where there's 12 languages being spoken in a tiny, room. Everybody's sleeping on a pad on the floor. The way he didn't care about money. What he cared about was experience and women and wine and food and just living life itself, You
know what I feel when I read him? I feel also he didn't care about writing rules. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
He just wrote and that's it. Like his books are not like novels. It's, they're considered fiction, but they're not really. They're it's called like conscious writing, I don't know if it's called that way, but anyway, I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm happy to meet somebody who's a fan of his also. Jeez, I ask a lot of people if they know Henry Miller, and they don't know him, And
he just pushed for freedom the whole time. Why sell yourself out to a job and material possessions that fall apart and rust? He was all about living this life every moment with a smile on your face and a song in your heart, no matter what the circumstances.
Who is your favorite author?
Boy, that's a tough one. But, one book that I read every year is The Odyssey by Homer.
Why? What's so interesting about it?
Because that story of the hero, the story of the quest and the journey, I think is timeless. And, some of the best stories, in fact, there's a saying that there are only really about 7 plot lines. And then every movie that's made or book that's written, will incorporate one or more of those plot lines. And, whether it's the fish out of water, somebody that comes into circumstances that are very different than his own, the emperor with no clothes, or everybody loves a lover, that sort of thing, those timeless mythological kind of stories. And there's just something about, Odysseus going off on these adventures, conquering these monsters, living with his wits, tying himself to the mast when they go by the sirens, the beautiful, seductive women that are luring the sailors in to their death ultimately. But he's smart enough to know he has to resist. It's just Cyclops. All of those sort of tests that he has to pass. I don't know. It just touches a nerve in me.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now you meet this guy. He tells you, hey, come to my island. And then what happens next? You start writing your book, but what happens?
Well, here's my dad again and my mother. And if they gave me the cold shoulder about going away for 3 months to Europe, my dad actually was going to call the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to come and find me because he thought I was smoking funny tobacco.
Really? Wow.
Well, he couldn't believe I quit my jobs. I never came home. And he thought that I got brainwashed or, I was doing drugs or something. Until later when he came to the island to visit and he had tears in his eyes and he stuck his hand out and apologized to me. And he says, you become the father and I'm the son. I have so much to learn from you. This place is so beautiful. Now I know why you're here. Because you can't really take pictures of Alaska's Inside Passage because it's too big. It doesn't fit into a camera. And you have to breathe that air. You have to just taste it as well as, look at a flat picture. So again, I had no parental approval. I'm there on this island and my mother's going, she had being Catholic from Italy. She has all these, superstitions and myths. And she's going, oh, Michael, my eye is twitching. That means death. I had a dream that a bear was eating you. But despite twitching eyes and disbelief from my dad, I stayed there. And Fred, it was not easy because and this is what my father told me. He said, "You're going to die." He said, "You have no experience. You've only been camping about twice before in your life. You have nothing on your resume." And it's true. If I was applying for a job to stay on that island, I would have been, my resume or lack of would have been thrown in a garbage can because I had no preparation for that experience other than reading about it.
How old were you at that time?
When I first went there, I was 28 years old. Mm-hmm. So, I was way in over my head, but I really believe that we're at our best when we challenge ourselves. And William James, a very famous psychologist, amazing writer. I was reading one of his books because you have all this time to read at night, when it gets dark at 4 p.m, sun doesn't come up to about 10 a.m. And I would sit there at the table, no electricity, but I would have these buttery kerosene lamps that were glowing around the table. And I just read book after book, sometimes a book a day. And William James, I picked up one of his books, and one of his sentences came off that page like it was in boldface. And it saved my life at the beginning of the stay, because William James wrote that we as human beings, we lead lives inferior to ourselves. We only live a tiny part of the colossal life we've all been given. Like Einstein says, we only operate on about 4% of our brain power, that we are meant for so much more, but we don't think we can do it, so we don't. Mm-hmm. But on the island, I had to do it. I had to reach down and pull up sort of instinctual knowledge that I didn't even know consciously that I had to survive.
All right, just before continuing this conversation, for you, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. I personally recommend the audiobook The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, or you can choose the audiobook of your choice for free by trying audible.com. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Fred. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Fred. You will be entertained, and at the same time, you will help a brother out. So everybody wins. Go to audibletrial.com/Fred for your free audiobook. Let me ask you this. A lot of people would like to do what you do, whether it's moving to an island, starting a business, write a book, or produce an album. But there are many fears that come in the way. And one of the main fears I notice is lack of money. Everybody's afraid of not being able to pay the bills, those damn bills that coming in the mail, so it prevents a lot of people from acting, from doing what they really, really, really want. What would you tell them?
At the beginning, it's always a challenge, but I really believe this, and I've seen it to happen, to come true, that when you are on fire with passion and purpose. In other words, people might work a job that they don't like, but they have a hobby that they love. Well, take that hobby, turn it into that business. But if you have passion and purpose, and if you're on fire with that belief in what you're doing, people around you have no choice but to fling open the closed doors. And I've seen that. It's almost, you could call it group hypnosis, but life, charisma, it's all about energy. And when you get your energy up, when you get your vibration level sky high with your own belief, but it's hard because you can't let any doubt creep in or the vibration drops. But if you've bought it, then you can sell it. But you've got to buy it 100% first to be the generator, to send that undeniable energy and passion out into the universe. And then people come and helpers like with angels with wings. Mm-hmm. And it was almost the same thing with Genevieve showing up in my life just because I loved the wilderness so much, but I didn't know if I could ever get to live close to it. And it's as if the universe heard that desire and sent this emissary, so maybe it was accidental that we bumped backs, or maybe she was sent. Who knows?
Another fear, rejection. It's like dating. It's like many things in life, and it's inevitable. It's like you're going to get rejected, but for some people it's overwhelming. And I'm not even talking about, in business. I'm talking about just some people stay in their homes and single because they don't want to get out. They can't not handle rejection from a man or a woman. Again, what would you advise them?
Oh, I would just say that you're one step closer to your goal. And, so many people have failed with businesses. Walt Disney, Thomas Edison. I mean, all these titans of communications, movies, inventions. I mean, you read biographies of all these great men. And, Piaget, I think a French educator, and he started Montessori school system. And he had a great saying where in that school system, he allows kids to be creative rather than memorize everything like a robot. And one sentence he said, I've never forgotten, Piaget wrote, "A mistake is just another way of doing things." So I think if you're rejected or your business fails, everything happens for a reason. It's to teach you something, and the underlying philosophy that I've learned is that nothing happens to us. We direct the movie totally from the inside out. And Fred, I really believe with 100% of my being that our minds are magnets. They are electromagnetic, and we don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. What we are internally, spiritually, at this level right now is what we manifest externally. And I really believe that's how reality works. I don't think things are accidental or, it comes to you accidentally. I really believe, just like film directors, we are directing that movie from the inside out.
Okay. And last fear, the third fear that I notice is fear of failure, because when you fail, it's humiliating, it's humbling. You're no longer, popular, and sometimes you even hurt other people. Again, how do you handle failure?
Again, I think it's a teacher. And I think sometimes if you succeed right away, you don't learn enough to keep that career, to give it longevity, to keep it fireproof or bulletproof. But I think by failure teaches us more than success does. So I think that failure is not to be looked at negatively, but it's to almost be embraced and say, thank you for the lessons. Now I'm a step closer to my goal or to success.
Let me ask you this. Earlier you talked about intuition. And how do you think that writing helped you in getting in touch with that intuitive part of you?
That writing does?
Yeah.
Oh, totally. There's a blind writer from Argentina named Borja. And, he couldn't see.
You said a blind writer?
Or poet. He was known for his poetry, but, short essays about labyrinths and libraries. It was sort of this imaginary world that he created, but he's sort of the writer's writer. Borges. And he said when your writing is going good, he called it a guided dream. And I get that sense where it makes the time-space continuum disappear. When you're, lost in that creative process, maybe you started at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then finally when you look up to take a breath, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But that time of, 5 hours, 4 hours seemed like it went by in 4 minutes. And I think that's the great thing about creativity. And that's why so many artists stay so young as they age, so vital. I mean, look at Picasso. He's almost 90 years old and he's still studly and, just cranking out this art. And it just reverses that time-space continuum. But it's a sense of a guided dream. So I think the writing does open the door to your subconscious. And that's the guiding light, that really should guide us, not the worrisome mind coming from the top of our heads.
All right. What is the link between creativity and spirituality, if there is one, in your opinion?
Oh, I think they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. Because I really think that life is school, and we're here to grow a soul. And I'm not talking about religion. I mean, I respect everybody's religions. Mm-hmm. But when man gets involved and meddles in religions, then almost every war that's ever happened in humanity has been driven by someone's religion, whether it's the Crusades, Christianity, whether it's jihad, what's going on now. I mean, the two words together, holy war. To me, what God would allow one drop of blood to be shed from anybody? So I think that religion, when man gets involved and makes it artificial, but spirituality, everybody has that soul. And I think the deeper you develop your soul, the more effective you are with your creativity. And even sex to me is, the Catholic Church. I was raised as a Catholic. Everything was a sin. Sex was dirty. No. I mean, Henry Miller called it the rosy crucifixion.
Yeah.
That image, whether the arms of the cross or the women's legs, it's just such a beautiful image. But to me, sex, when it's with somebody you love, oh my God, it's like a rocket ship. It's just, when you unite energies with somebody on a spiritual level, the sky's the limit. It's just phenomenal. And when you think about it, sex, creativity is behind everything. It's behind great art. And, I think when we try to repress that, people get depressed. If you try to shut down someone's vitality, their sexual drive, their very sap of the tree, then they're unhappy. We have to be those free-flowing. I think it was D.H. Lawrence, the great author, that said, be a good animal. Don't lose that instinct that's in your body.
It's interesting when you mention Henry Miller, because, sometimes when I read him, I go, if he would send this manuscript to, publishing houses today, he would get rejected automatically almost. You know what I mean? Because he doesn't, you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, it's such a different world where everything's politically correct. And we're so careful. And rightly so. We don't want to offend people. But, my goodness, I'm Polish. My grandfather came from Poland. And I tell Polish jokes all the time. I think the world has to lighten up a little bit. We're too critical and serious that way.
Do you have a specific creative process?
I'm writing all the time. Whether I'm taking a shower, going for a run. I used to carry a notepad with me, but now with a smartphone, you can just record anything. It's just a constant flow. But writers have different techniques when they sit down. Some people burn incense to put themselves in that mood. But I really feel that, I'm never blocked as a writer, because if I'm going to write a long book, I never get overwhelmed by, oh my God, I got to put all that in there or whatever. I just write scenes on note cards. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that I didn't know this until later. I learned about it, that Nabokov, the great Russian writer that created Lolita, that's what he would do. That on these kind of postcard size pieces of paper, he would just write scenes. And then he would move them around on his office wall like puzzle pieces, and then sort of connect them. Mm-hmm. And he would never write sequentially or linearly, in a straight line. He would sort of write all over the place and just piece it together. Mm-hmm. And that way you're never blocked, or the flow never stops, if you just do one small scene at a time.
Do you believe in writer's block? Do you believe that it can happen to some?
Well, what I tell people all the time, that want to be writers, or at the beginning, I say, don't think, just write. And it's almost like what Henry Miller and a lot of those authors did in the Lost Generation in the 20s and 30s in Paris, the surrealists, is if you just sit down with a pen, piece of paper, or your keyboard and just write what's coming stream of consciousness, get warmed up. You know, a lot of people think too much. They overthink it rather than finding that subconscious voice and allowing it to rise to the surface.
Let me ask you this. A lot of artists have a hard time mixing money and their art. The starving artist myth and all. Well, I don't know if to you it's the myth, but how do you mix financial abundance and art?
Well, it's too much for an artist or a writer to do the marketing side as well. There's very few people that I know that do both. And you're not very effective if you try to market or sell yourself, because then you sound like a blowhard. You sound like you're too full of yourself if you have to extol your own talents or virtues. So that's why I think it's good to find a partner. And even better is to find a love partner that can sort of help or take over that job of selling you. Because if they can sing your praises, it's much more effective than you trying to talk about your own virtues. And I've been very, very fortunate to meet a woman, and that happened with this crazy Cosmopolitan thing, who sort of helps manage my career, gets on the phone when the checks are late, and it also helps having an agent, being represented by somebody, even though you have to share 15% of, what you make with them. Because it's too overwhelming, especially today when the media and people wanting, whether it's YouTube videos or, everybody's just trying to be that artist. And it's so much harder now for the millennial generation because the competition is just so much more, it's so much more thick.
Mm-hmm. How do you remain calm in uncertainty?
Calm in uncertainty?
Yeah.
I think back to all the near-death moments that I have been through, especially living in the wilderness, and it reduces any challenge down to just like nothing. Because if we have 9 lives like a cat, I have about 1.5 left. That's how close I
Wow.
physically have come to death. But I really believe that everybody enters this world with a life plan. Call it a blueprint. And somewhere in that blueprint is our exit point when we're supposed to leave. But no matter what stupidity I do, I haven't checked out yet until I get to that point, because I think I have lessons to learn before that point, and maybe I have some knowledge to share before I'm meant to leave. So when you go through, the near death where, it is literally life or death, anything that seems complex or challenging sometimes is maybe a self-created monster. A lot of times, that saying that the only thing to fear is fear itself. And I think there are a lot of phantoms that we also create.
We're going to wrap this up. 2 more questions. You mentioned near-death experiences. Can you tell us one?
Well, living on the island, no radio, no telephone, no communication, totally off the grid. But to read the weather, and it's some of the worst weather in the world up there because the wind in the winter can blow 70, 80 miles an hour from the southeast. And the rain lasts not for days, but for weeks. But you learn to read the weather by looking at the clouds. And there's clouds called wind doggies or mare's tails that just looks like a horse's tail across the sky. And that's telling you that there's some big wind coming. And you also study the ocean. And you can tell by the color and movement, you become that good animal and your instincts take over. So everything looked good. The clouds weren't moving. The ocean was calm. And to go in to get supplies, it was about 12 miles away to a native Kwakiutl town. 12 miles, you can get in a car and you can drive that in about 5 minutes. But in a boat, a tiny little boat with a little outboard engine, that could take, as long as a day, depending on the tides and everything else. So Fred, I got halfway out. There was a little island called the Point of No Return where you're entering this big stretch of open water. And all of a sudden I said to myself, where's all the birds? Like, where's the animals? I'm not hearing any, gulls crying. I'm not seeing the eagles or ravens. And you know how animals can tell if there's an earthquake coming or a big storm. They have that animal sense and they head for higher ground or batten down the hatches. So there are winds up there that come off the glaciers that are hanging on these mountains. And if the air is a lot warmer than the ice, it'll produce these willow walls, they're called. So here I am, long story short, calm ocean, calm sky. 20 minutes later, there were 18-foot waves on the ocean, kicked up by this big wind that came down off the glacier. So there's 190 things you need to do every week in the wilderness, like a checklist. And sometimes I was so busy, I only got to number 87. And one of them was on this cedar dory, a wooden dory. It had an outboard engine on the back transom. And this would take 10 seconds, but I forgot to do it. Is you take the transom screws in your hands and you tighten the engine down so it sits tightly on that narrow board in the back of your wooden boat. Well, I hadn't done that in about a month. And every day of taking that dory out, that wood would flex in the ocean and in the tides. Well, riding down an 18-foot wave, I misjudged the speed of the wave and I pounded the trough. That outboard engine flew up into the air. Even though I had my hand on the tiller arm, it was wet and the engine slipped out of my hand and disappeared. So there you are with no power. The boat goes sideways into the sea. And I remember ducking and a wave roared over me. And I said, I'm dead. That's it. I'm going to drown. And then minutes, hours, I don't know time later, I felt the wind on the back of my neck. I stood up. I was still alive, but there was water up to my waist. But what saved me is the man who hand built that dory put a double bottom and there was air trapped between the two bottoms of the boat. And that was enough flotation to stave off that heavy water weight. So by all means, I should have been dead. And then the waves pushed me into the shore, smashed the boat apart. I rolled right up to the feet of a Native American. And he nudged me with his toe and he said, I always knew you white people were crazy, but now I know for sure.
Hey, if you were stuck on an island, $500 in your pocket, no one else, a laptop and an internet connection, what would you do? Would you do it in the next 7 days?
With $500 and an internet connection?
Yeah, and a laptop.
Well, I would definitely try to get a date because the worst part of the experience was the loneliness. And it wasn't the loneliness out of depression or despair. It was you felt most alone when something beautiful happened. And that was every day, the northern lights, iridescent pink and purple colors swirling around your cabin. The wolves on the island would come out on the beach and howl at the sky, at the lights. It was like the earth was serenading the sky. And it was at moments like that that you just ached for another human being, preferably female, that you could jump up and down and wrap your arms around each other. It would definitely be sending out a signal for, somebody female, come and save me.
Yeah.
But, that's what happened then with that crazy Cosmo thing, with being the Bachelor. My life is extremes. I go from no dates in the wilderness for 2 years to having, thousands of letters from women all over the world. It was absolutely nuts.
Oh man, I want to talk about that. I'm going to read your book and we're going to talk about it because that's going to be an interesting conversation. Hey, where can we find you? Where can we find your work?
Online, Amazon.com. My last name is hard to spell, but if they just type in wildlife, it's 2 separate words. Then it would take people to my author page and all my social media is listed there. And I'd be so grateful. And, it's so great now with social media to be able to keep in touch with people directly instead of being an isolated writer somewhere. So I really appreciate, everybody that has read my stuff. And I am the naturalist on Princess Cruises in the summertime from May to September. I give programs on Alaska, and many people come on the ship to take a cruise to Alaska. And you should do your show from the ship sometime. It would just be amazing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, can you summarize wildlife for the listeners?
What's that?
Get it? Can you summarize wildlife for the listeners?
Well, wildlife is everything I know about.
That's your latest book, right?
Yeah, that's the new book. And it's about being a Bachelor of the Month. Every month, Cosmopolitan Magazine, which is the best-selling women's magazine in the world. It goes to 100 countries. It's translated into 87 languages. And every month, they pick a single guy, and they make him the Bachelor of the Month, where women can write to him from all over the world. So my literary agent at the time said, dude, Sigmund Freud once asked, what do women really want? When you're going into being Mr. November, why don't you study these women like you studied the wildlife in British Columbia and Alaska? So I love titles of books that have double meaning. So it's two words meaning the life is wild, wildlife, and also studying human females as if they are animals, which we all are, you know? So it's kind of a fun book, a lot of humor, a lot of sex, a lot of craziness, but there's a happy ending as well.
Wow. Awesome. Hey, Michael, I love these types of stories. It's amazing to hear that stuff. And it's always fun to talk to people like you because we learn a lot. And I think we learn best by sharing. And man, your life is really, you had an awesome life.
Well, I just feel so fortunate. You know, I never wanted to play by the rules. I mean, I never do anything illegal, but I just always wondered, aren't we here for more?
Yeah.
Aren't we here for more than just making money and buying stuff? Aren't we here to challenge ourselves, you know, to maximize our potential? Because whatever you think about an afterlife or death, you know, there's never been a U-Haul that follows a hearse. You know, we can't take all of our possessions with us, but I really believe that the adventures we have, how we grow our soul, that somehow that does stick with us as we journey on to the spiritual realm. You know, that's to me, the money that I'm after, the wealth and the treasure. The money that I do make, I turn it into adventures because to me, that's why we're here, is to grow.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Okay. Hey. This is, how did you like him? Yeah, I know you did. I know you liked him. Michael Modzelewski, thank you so much, man, for being such a great guest. It's just a uplifting, positive guy. It's always fun to speak to these people, you know, to speak to these people. I love doing this, man. This podcast, I get to talk to you guys. I get to, you know, talk to people like Michael, and it's great, man. It's great. All right. It's time for me to ride off into the sunset. So catch me on frederickby.com. What you're going to do now, there's one thing you can do now. There's only one thing you can do is you're going to go on frederickby.com. You're going to enter your email. You're going to join our creatives community right now so you can get your free audio. And by the way, this audio is going to be won't be available for for a while now, so it will not be available in a short time. So go get it. You're also going to get some giveaways that I'm planning to give in the next few days or weeks. You got to subscribe to know about it. So go right now, Frederick. That's my name with a C. Frederick with a C. Bye, like bye-bye. .com. And right before I leave you guys, I just want to leave you with this quote. The creative process is a process of surrender, not control. From Julia Cameron. With this, stay safe and don't forget, live with purpose, passion, and love. Bye-bye.